Welcome back to Leap Into Business, the official podcast of the School of Business here at Lehman College. And don't forget, our School of Business here at Lehman College is the only school of business at a public institution of higher education in either the Bronx or Westchester. And as always, I'm joined, my co-host here, Lawrence Fauntleroy. And today on the podcast, Lawrence, we're joined by a very esteemed guest. Lawrence, you want to introduce our guest
I'm
here?
super psyched, Sean.
I'm super psyched too.
First, I want to thank Mr. Catsimatidis, but John, if you don't mind. For the podcast.
John is fine.
I just want to prove to him that I can say his name.
Absolutely.
Like this, Sean.
I deferred to you on that one,
Yeah.
too, if you didn't notice.
1,000%. First, I want to thank him on behalf of Lehman, on behalf of our dean, on behalf of the president for stopping by Lehman College. It's interesting because when you came by and dropped off your books and signed tons of copies, now that I come back, it's a bestseller. So you're doing numbers. You're doing numbers, which is great. Before we get started, I want to connect John directly to our students. I've read his book about 1.5, 2 times, Sean. Had a lot of fun reading it. And so first, if you don't know this, John is a first-generation American, like many of our students at Lehman College. John was raised in Harlem, and he grew up on his building was 517 West 135th Street. I don't know if you remember this, John, but when you came to Lehman, I asked you about that. You gave me the apartment number, right?
512 West 135th Street, apartment 33.
Apartment 33. And I think he was testing me if I read the book, because I said, John, you didn't write the apartment number in the book. And he said, you're right. I didn't put the apartment number in the book. So I just wanted to know. And the reason why that building is really special to me, because I coach basketball, and I actually had a kid that played for me that lived in your same building.
Wow.
And I never knew that was the synergy there. He also went to the PS 192, which is right around the corner from where he lived. That's on
It was
138th
across
Street.
from Lewiston Stadium at City College.
He's trying to show off that his memory is better than mine. But he did that. He went to Brooklyn Tech, so he's had a public education, right? Which a lot of our students have had public educations as well. This is what was interesting, John. You went to school in the Bronx when NYU had an engineering school in the Bronx, right?
Yes.
And in your book, you talk about NYU sitting on a hill, right? And that hill now is Bronx Community College, right? And many of our students have went to Bronx Community College as well. So you've traveled these same spaces that our students have traveled. You've been on the board of the PAL for over 30 years.
Almost 40.
Almost 40. And many of our students, they understand the PAL is the Police Athletic League. I've coached in the Police Athletic League. It has been instrumental in many, many neighborhoods. So you have that in common. You actually fund a scholarship for 100 black men, which I actually know a lot of people that work with 100 black men. So we thank you for that. And you played a big role when Hurricane Maria happened, especially in all the Caribbean islands. And many of our students come from those islands, Dominica and all those islands. So we thank you.
And we had stores in St. Croix. We had stores in St. Thomas. Mm-hmm. We had stores in Freeport, Bahamas. And we had an airline that flew all those islands.
Right.
Puerto Rico was our main destination, but not only San Juan, Borinquen, and we were the only airline to fly to Borinquen at that time. Wow. And Dominican Republic, we were flying there, and we did try Haiti for a while, but that's a very problematic country.
Yeah,
it was a problematic country then, and I feel very bad for the 10 million people that are there. And it's. I hope they fix it.
Yeah, it is a hard issue to kind of solve. John, I'm going to start from the beginning. Can you take us back to the streets of Harlem where you played as a child and just tell us, and one of the things I had asked a couple of people to read your book and give me some questions to help me out, right? Nobody could come up with anything that I didn't already have. But
obviously not.
I'm sorry, Sean. Yeah. But one of the things that somebody came up with that was interesting is that you're an only child, right?
I'm an only child. So that the point where it came up, I'm an only child. Congressman William Fitzryan, who was the West Side of Manhattan congressman at that point. I worked for him when I was 14 years old, and 15 years old and 16 years old. He gave me the congressional nomination for West Point.
Wow.
And when I told my parents, my mother
Cried.
My father yelled because I was an only child. It's different when you're an only child.
Right.
And I said, and I succumbed to their wishes because I love my parents. And because once you go to West Point, you have 4 years you're away for college at West Point, and then you have a 5-year obligation, and you can be stationed all over the world.
Right.
So my parents didn't want to give me up.
Right. Well, tell me how being an only child, and I've lived in Harlem before myself, and I grew up in the Bronx and all over New York City. And one of the things that is interesting about being an only child is that you come into neighborhoods and people have brothers and sisters, and you feel alone a little bit. Right? How did the community in Harlem kind of embrace you, and how do you think that helped your entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, 135th Street at that time was a blend. There was Irish kids, there was Italian kids, there was Greek kids, there were black kids, there were Hispanic kids. And, I say the word Hispanic because some people are from Puerto Rico, some people are from Dominican Republic. It was a blend. And and everybody got along together. And I'm going to give you a secret when that turned. Because it was the worst thing that could happen in the 1950s is you threaten a kid. You say, I'm going to punch you in the mouth.
Right.
It wasn't like, I'm going to shoot you.
Right.
I'm going to take a knife out and kill you.
Right.
There was nothing like that.
Right.
And I remember sometimes I had a lot of friends in Astoria. And during the transit strike, we would walk through Harlem. My mother would normally go down Amsterdam Avenue, right by the Safeway on 129th Street, 30th Street, across 125th Street, right by the Army Navy store, and all the way to Bloomstein's, was it? And they had 99-cent sales. At Bloomstein's department store in Harlem. See, I was there.
Wow, that might have been before my time,
and
John.
we would walk through Harlem like nobody was afraid. Nobody was scared.
Right.
Nobody. And you know when the problems happened? It's part of history. When the kids came back from Vietnam.
It was a huge drug problem.
Vietnam, we lost 50,000 kids in Vietnam. But we lost more than that. Because a lot of the kids that came back were addicted to drugs. And that's when the problems in Harlem began. Otherwise, Harlem is a great place, a great thing. And I still go there all the time because we have the Police Athletic League places on 119th Street and Manhattan Avenue. And I came from there, and I never forgot I came from there. And when I worked for Mr. Morgenthau ran the Police Athletic League for like 40, 50 years. He passed away when he was 99 years old. 99 and 10 months.
Wow.
And I'm now chairman, along with Bob McGuire. He's my co-chairman. Bob McGuire was the police commissioner. Are you sitting down? 1977, I think, I forget who was mayor at that time. Was it
Lindsay?
He's still dedicated, but I'm around day to day.
Right.
I tell the kids in the Police Athletic League, I would go there with Commissioner Kelly or Commissioner Bratton, a commissioner, and there's 100 kids over there in the corner, and I would turn to the commissioner and say, how many of those kids can we save? Because I'd love to save the whole 100.
Right.
But it doesn't happen.
Right.
So we try to use our input. We try to use, because these kids need guidance.
Right.
They need somebody to put their hand on their shoulder and say, this is the right thing to do.
Right.
Don't go the wrong direction.
Right.
And the more kids we can save at the Police Athletic League, the happier I am. And that's my mission.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I wrote the book is not only for my own children to know where they came from and how it got here, but for people that read the book. You know who buys the book a lot? Grandfathers and grandmothers, fathers and mothers, and give it to their kids or grandkids. Because if we can make a difference in a couple of kids' lives,
it matters.
then it's worth working.
Yeah, it matters.
And these kids have to realize that if they keep their nose clean, and that they can make, I made it, and that's my expression. I made it. You can make it too.
Right.
And they have to know that. The difference in my life, I lived on 512 West 135th Street. I had a 5-inch television set. I think it was either a Philco or an Emerson.
Black and white.
Black and white. And you know how to learn how to speak English? Because my parents only spoke Greek at home.
You watch cartoons.
I watched
Watch cartoons.
that 5-inch screen. And
With no closed caption, though. Back then, they didn't have no closed caption.
And there were only like 5 channels at that time.
Yeah.
It was Channel 2, Channel 4,
5,
5,
7,
7, 9,
11.
And 13 came later. And 11, yes.
and 11, yeah.
And that was it.
I'm just as me and John are the same age, just in case you don't know. But
I think you're a lot younger. But that's how I learned to. When I went to kindergarten, I didn't speak that well.
Right.
And my biggest fear is I had such a long name.
Right.
And nobody could understand how come you have such a long name.
Right. Right.
And my fear of growing up that I wasn't going to be accepted because I was different.
You talk about that in the book about being a first-generation American, about being accepted into this culture. And I know often a lot of our students have that same issue where coming into a new culture, how do you get accepted? And then still keep your own pride from where you come from. And I know Greece just celebrated their independence last week, so kudos to that. But you talk about that in the book, about just being accepted coming from another country. How hard was that transition?
Well, everybody has that transition. The Greeks have an organization called a HEPA. And you know why a HEPA was formed? Because the Ku Klux Klan used to go after the Greeks.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And a HEPA was formed to try to defend. Archbishop Iakovos marched, which was my archbishop, marched with Martin Luther King.
Yep.
And it's having respect for, and I try to teach that to my kids, and my parents taught me respect for our forefathers, but we're Americans and having respect for our country.
Right.
And some of the things going on today, I used to read comic books in yesteryear, Bizarro World, which was the Superman comics in a world that was bizarro.
Right, it was crazy.
And some of the things going on right now,
It feels like that.
I just don't understand.
It feels like that. It feels like that.
But we love America, and I want my kids and my grandkids to come someday to experience what I've experienced,
Right.
and to have a country that's has freedom of speech but they also have to have respect for the country.
Right.
I remember I was 6 years old where I went down to the government center to be sworn in as a citizen of the United States at 6 years old.
Wow.
And I remember that day, and I put my hand up and say, I pledge allegiance, and,
Right.
and I salute the flag. And I just worry that in 2076 will be the 300th year of our country. I hope we make it.
Yeah.
Because if we keep going the way we are,
Yeah.
I worry about the United States.
Yep. Yep.
And, having those foundational beliefs and principles. And Lawrence, I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah,
here.
go. Let's
So,
go. Yeah, absolutely.
How does that connect to business, right? Because obviously in business you have to be business oriented, but principles, leadership, and ethics are critically important.
Well,
and how is that?
I went into business. I was a poor kid from 135th Street going to NYU with all the rich kids from Scarsdale. And I was a little bit uncomfortable. I was scared to tell the girls that I lived on 135th Street. I don't know if this is in the book.
No, that's not in the book. That's not in the book.
The most beautiful building, the most beautiful building in New York at that time was 200 Central Park South, right on the Central Park South, 59th Street.
Okay.
So I would tell the girls I lived there. and because I was ashamed to say I lived on 135th Street.
But talk about that shame though, because did Harlem have a bad reputation at that time?
No, but I'm among all the rich kids. From,
right. So you want to? I'm on Park Avenue.
Be one of them.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And the other thing, the first show I really watched that gave me the incentive to work hard. There was this detective show called Burke's Law, and it was about this detective that was wealthy, and he had a Rolls Royce, but he still worked for the NYPD being a detective.
Right.
And I said, oh my God, I want to have a Rolls Royce someday. So this kid from 135th Street, where his parents paid $48 a month rent for 5 rooms.
Wow.
I wanted to. I wanted to do better.
You wanted to do better.
And people, I look forward for kids reading the book to say, you know something, I want to do better too.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is keep your nose clean. But don't get in trouble, because if you get in trouble, you're going to be behind the curve.
Right.
Graduate. Graduate from high school. Pick something that you like in college. I almost took. I remember getting out of junior high. I liked airplanes. I always liked airplanes. I almost went to aviation high school because it would teach me how to fly, or teach me how to fix airplanes, and I liked airplanes. And at one time, I said to my father, and I want to become an astronaut.
Right.
And he would make fun of me.
Right.
And I got mad. I really got mad. And I don't know why you were making fun of me. You know.
But you became a pilot.
The Greek word for flyer is aeroporos or something like that. And he would say, "Oh, you're going to become an aeroporos," which means you're going to become a fodder. and I would argue with my father, but I graduated high school. I went to NYU because I wanted to stay home with my parents.
Right.
And I went to work hard. And I'm going to give you the secret to success. When he was my big brother that sold me a store.
Tony.
Because
Tony.
Because he was having arguments with his uncle all the time. If he would buy 10 cases of oranges, why did you buy 10? You should have bought 20 because it was a good price. Right. Next week you'd buy 20 cases of oranges. Right. They're going to go rotten. Why did you buy 20? Right. So not to have family problems. Tony, who was like a big brother to me, says, you got to buy my half of the store. I said, Tony, I'm going to school. How can I do that?
Right.
Yep.
And he says, here, sign here, 10 notes, $1,000 a month. You're going to pay me back.
Did you think you could do that?
I didn't even know I could make $1,000 a month. My father was a busboy making $100 a week.
Right.
It was a leap of faith.
That was a big leap of faith.
But, what are they going to do to me? I had no money.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Foreclosed.
What's the downside?
So I did it. And I took that, and me and his uncle never had one argument in our lives.
Right.
I turned that store around, made it a success.
How?
Good old American know-how. good old American know-how. And his father, his uncle was an immigrant. He didn't know anything about running a grocery store.
Right. Right.
You know, I made the store a success, and we started making a profit. I mean, profit. I made $500 a week, which is a lot of money.
That's a lot. Yeah.
And he made $500 a week. So how do you argue when you're making $500 a week in 1969? And we never argued. He let me merchandise the store. He let me run the store.
You did some groundbreaking things, John, with your store. So, one, you started cashing checks in the neighborhood.
Yes,
right?
and we cashed more checks than Citibank.
Okay, so you cash checks in the neighborhood, so you're creating community. The other thing that you did was huge is you stayed open late at night when you wasn't necessarily supposed to.
We opened to midnight, so we did extra business. We opened to 1 o'clock in the morning, so we did extra business when the supermarkets closed.
So I know you.
And
I know
one more thing. We did the unheard of.
Is this going to be on? Is this going to be on tape? Should we know this?
We opened on Sundays.
I know that. When it was a law that you couldn't.
We opened on Sundays. And you know why I opened on Sundays? Failure in the book, page 255. Failure is not an option. I gave out checks on Friday. I needed an extra day's sales to make sure there was money in the bank on Monday to clear those checks. So we opened up on Sunday, and the police would come around and give me a $2 ticket.
Well, John, Sean is an accountant, right?
Yeah.
So were you looking at the book saying, okay, from 6 o'clock at night to this, from 6 p.m. I'm making X amount of dollars? Like, what was the analytics fueling for you to do that? Or?
When we opened from 9 o'clock to 1 o'clock at night, and we were the only place open, we did just as much sales between like 8 o'clock at night to 1 in the morning.
Wow.
As the whole rest of the day.
Wow.
Really?
So you had to do it.
Absolutely.
Hey, and I worked. Nick, Tony's uncle, would work from 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, 5 in the afternoon. I'd finish school at 4, be at the store at 5, and work till 1 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
And
it paid off.
And it was a tough neighborhood too. We were that first store. We were right next to the Midway Hotel. Midway Hotel was a tough place.
Wow.
And but you have to work hard. And then how did I get the 10 stores? This is the most important thing. I had no money. I had no banking relationships. I was an engineer.
Right.
Almost.
Eight credits short. 8 credits short.
The vendors I was doing business with started to like me.
Can you talk about those relationships? How important is a relationship?
Relationships are everything. If people like you, they will find a reason to do business with you. And I built the first 10 stores in 5 years. By 1974, we had 10 stores. And you're sitting down, I was making $1 million a year.
At 24 years old.
When $1 million was a real $1 million, was a
now,
lot of money.
Were you still telling people you lived on Park Avenue?
Huh?
Were you still telling people? Now you moved there. Exactly.
The first place I moved into 333 West 86th Street, right off of 86th Street and Riverside Drive.
Are you stressing?
Nice area.
You're 24 years old. Are you stressing out at this time? Like, I'm making all this money. I'm doing, like, what's going on?
Worst comes to worst, I go back to 135th Street.
That's it.
That's what I always thought.
Yeah.
And my parents, and then you know what I did? I felt bad for my parents, so I moved them in with me. So I moved them out of 135th Street, moved them in with me.
Did they want to do that? Usually moms go screaming and kicking like, this is my space. How did?
They did it.
They did.
They did it. And we became successful. And it's just, but people, I didn't have any money to build those 10 stores. All the vendors, the ice cream guy, the grocery delivery, grocery people, the dairy people would all advance me money to open up the next store and the next store and the next store. And one of my mentors was Sam Stein. Sam Stein, the law firm of Stein, Rosen.
His last name is Stein.
Stein, Rosen, and Ornstein.
Excellent.
Remember Senator Ornstein?
I got to give you the plug. I got to give you the plug.
Remember
Sean.
Senator Ornstein?
Yes.
Stein, Rosen, and Ornstein. And Sam Stein owned a wholesale grocery company called Filigree Foods at that time. He took a liking to me. He was my lawyer. Filigree Foods was my main supplier. He made it happen.
He made it happen.
He made it happen. And then he talked to the other companies. Lou Israelo was owned Royal Dairy at that time. He gave me a large credit, and I opened up 10 stores, not with bank money.
Right. With just
Vendor money.
With
Vendor
relationships.
money,
Yeah. It's interesting you said that, John, because your president, Chad, had said something interesting to us about don't burn any bridges. Right?
Yes.
And you're saying the same thing. So it's almost like a company mantra here. It's like you just don't burn bridges in relationships.
If people like you, they will help you succeed. If people don't like you, forget about it. And I think that's a big lesson to learn for young people. And there's no substitute for hard work. Anybody thinks that you're going to work 3 days a week and become successful, how do you say it in Brooklyn? Forget about it.
Forget about it.
You know, and that's the first big lesson you
Right.
learn. And like I said, page 255, I have certain lessons that I remembered and I learned.
Yep.
And
So building on that, you know, for our student audience here right now, how would you tell them, or how would you advise them best to be their true self, to build those relationships, right? Because obviously people are different, have different views, and so how do you try to do business, build that out, and also not compromise your own values during that process?
just, you stay straight. I will tell you a story. We had a grand opening on 103rd Street and Broadway.
Okay.
You know, a mixed neighborhood. And this young African kid comes up to me. And he's got his hat backwards. And he's got his shirt out. And he says, "Hey, man, you got a job for me, man?" I said, "Yes. But you got to
Come presentable.
straighten out. Move your hat the right way. Put your shirt in your pants. Here's my card. Come to my office." We gave him a job,
Wow.
and he succeeded.
Wow.
But these kids, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. Senator Moynihan, which was one of the best senators in our state, came up with a paper about 35 years ago,
Yep.
and said one of the problems in our inner cities, it's 30% of the kids from our inner cities only has one parent. I was lucky; I had two parents. And if the parent has to work, you're going to end up in my days, the local pizzeria or the local candy store.
Right.
And you meet the wrong people. Then you end up going down the wrong road.
Right.
You know, that guy comes up with a Cadillac. "Hey, man, you want to make some quick money?"
Right. Right.
And that's what you have to watch out for.
Right.
And that's what the kids have to watch out for.
Right.
So what I think is, whether it's Police Athletic League or Big Brothers or whatever, these kids need guidance.
Right.
They need somebody to help guide them. And it's very important because everybody is born with the same intelligence. You just have to develop it.
Right.
And you know what the problem is today? Under Senator Moynihan, it was 30%. The number is now 70%.
Wow.
So our inner cities are in trouble.
Right.
So we keep our kids clean. It's even a tougher job.
Right. I got to ask you this question because we make sure we get this question off. Yeah. So there are 3 metaphorical bones in business. So listen to this one, John. There's your backbone, which is your decision making. There's your wishbone, which is your luck or serendipity. And then there's your funny bone, which is your sense of humor, right? Which one of those business bones do you think is your strongest and why?
Well,
we know you got all 3.
I will give you, I'll give you a thing. And I'm also in the Greek community.
Okay.
I am the Archbishop is the head of the Church of all of North America. I'm the highest layperson.
Okay.
So I'm like the vice chairman of the board. The Archbishop's chairman, and we have 530 churches, 13 dioceses, and I go to Astoria a lot, because that's where a lot of Greek people. And you know what I tell those Greek kids? A different conversation than the kids from Powell.
Right.
I tell those Greek kids, hey, look up high and aim high. You don't want to be just the best kid on your block. You don't want to be just the best kid in Astoria. Look up higher. You want to be the best in our country, in the world. So pick something you like to do and be the best. So aim high.
Aim high.
Aim high. Look all the way up. Aim high. Work hard.
So I'm going to take it as your backbone is your heart. Your decision making is your out of those business bones.
In life. I say it in a different way in the book, I think. In life, you're going to go into 100 different forks in the road. Do I go to West Point?
Right.
Or do I go to NYU? Do I go take up engineering or do I take
aviation?
Aviation. So the forks in the road are very important. And the other thing in the book, I had probably a dozen mentors.
Can you talk
go look for the people?
That's an important point.
That's important.
Go look for people.
How did you find your mentors?
Gray hair.
How do you find your mentors, John?
Well, by getting involved in the community. By when I was working, I had a lot of vendors in the food business.
Right.
You know, people that was 60, real old, 60 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm 75 now, but real old, 60-year-old guys.
Right. And you just go ask them, John? You just say, hey.
No, they would volunteer
and
put their hand around me and give me advice in business.
And you have to be open and receptive.
They only volunteered that due to your hard work and being open to it.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So that helped. And that made a difference in my life, having those 12 mentors.
And is it safe to say when you get a mentor, you got to come with your cup empty, right? Ready to sponge in all of
And you have to use your brain as a sponge.
Right.
Learn.
Right.
And I had one mentor that wasn't necessarily one of the smartest guys I know, a German Jewish guy. And he had gotten in trouble. He came to work for me at that point because he'd gotten in trouble because he had he was a CFO of a public company and he had a 10b-5 violation. The other thing that you learn, is very important. Be able to draw the line. Draw the line. And he ended up to be a great mentor for me. But I learned all the good stuff from him.
Right.
But all the stuff that was
right on the other
not
side.
right.
Right.
I would ignore.
Right.
And stay away from it.
Stay away from it.
Because you're always going to meet these con artists sometimes. Smart like heck. But they're there. They're not going to do the right thing for you. Learn the good stuff. Throw away the bad stuff.
Right.
Learn the good stuff. Toss out the bad stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great phrase.
Yeah.
And Lawrence, do you want to Wrap us up.
I want to wrap us up. John, thank you. So on behalf of Lehman College, our dean, our School of Business, I want to thank you for inviting. Your studio is better than ours.
It honestly is better.
And it's
than
not
ours,
just
John.
the plant, Sean. It's like
It's the,
it
plant,
really
it's,
is.
it's the widescreen. It's the lighting.
yes, the
I
light
grew
really
up
is,
with
guys.
WABC.
Mm-hmm.
I had a transistor radio.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, in the 1950s, there were 3 transistors in the radio. And I would listen to WABC. I would listen to Cousin Brucey. With the music it was a music station too in those days. Your iPhone now has 15 billion transistors.
Unbelievable.
So learn to use the bullets at your disposal.
Absolutely. This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Really
Thank you
great,
so
John.
much,
Thank you so much.
Mr. Catsimatidis. We loved it. Our students.
I love doing it. If we can make the difference in a few people's lives, I feel the time is worthwhile.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
so much.
Again.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, John.